I'm Dan Morris, you're watching Post and Dan Bushcraft, and today we're going to be discussing my personal choice in bushcraft lighting. Now, you're joining me from the back of my chilly garage today, as you probably guessed by all the junk that's lying around us. This would have been a lovely woodland video, but a week ago now, well, more than a week ago, I had a bit of an injury at work, smashed my face up pretty good, broke my nose, put it the other side of my face, and I've recently had to have a little surgery to put it back there. Don't really know what that entailed. It was probably just some chap with a croquet mallet while I was asleep, but they've done that and feeling a little on the side, so I'm not going trooping around the woods throwing axes about today. Also, just after I'd done it, just after I broke my nose, I picked up this nasty little cold from somewhere. You have to excuse my stylish Winnie the Pooh cup. It's not that I'm a massive fan of Winnie the Pooh, it's just this is a lovely big cup. So, oh, vitamin coffee. Start every day with it. So, lighting wise, general purpose bushcrafty lighting for when you're out in the woods or doing whatever it is you're doing. I know these days most people have swapped for electric lights. Everybody's got all these massive, many variants of electric lights that you can carry around with you. There's loads of them, USB rechargeable ones. I've got some personally. I do keep a small stock of like Cree LED head torches and things like that, but they're not really my preference. They're not my number one. The things that I always use personally when I'm in the woods are these things: paraffin lamps or kerosene lamps, depending on what part of the world you are. Kerosene, paraffin, same stuff. Slightly thinner version of diesel, doesn't smell as bad. Now, these, I know they're old world now, I know they're really old technology and blah blah blah, and yes, electric lights can be a lot brighter, particularly if you want to see a distance, which is why I am not saying to anybody, go out, buy yourself 5,000 of these things and throw all your electric lights in the bin. Not at all. No, by all means, don't be doing that. I do carry electric lights of some description as backups, and also for sometimes when I need a projected beam, I need to see into the distance, things like that. I always will have some form of electronic backup, but one thing that I will never do is rely on electric lights for what I would call ambient lighting. So if I've got a camp set up and I want to put some lamps here and there to see what I'm doing, I wouldn't use electric for that. They're just too unreliable. They chew through batteries really quickly, and it might just be me, but I have this little thing with electric lights where I'll hang one up and then I keep looking at it and thinking, I swear that's getting duller, I swear that's losing power, and it just drives me absolutely mad. These things, you don't have to worry about it. There's a few different types here. These two are both what you would call a cold blast lamp. But these are both by the same maker, the company's Fjord Hand. This little one here, I've got 6 of these identical ones. This one's actually my particular favourite, and its model is the 275 Baby. I prefer these over any of them. They are the most reliable, the most easy to work with. They also put up with the worst of the weather. You can wander through hurricanes with them and they won't blow out. This is a Tilly. It's a different type of lamp. It's a pressure lamp. This one you have to pump up with air to get it to work, but I'll go through the lighting process with this because a lot of people don't know how you actually light these things. We'll go through that a bit later on. Different sorts of these, still the paraffin lamp. And this chappie is actually made by a British maker called Veritas, and its model is a Pax, and as you can tell, that is a very old version of one. Ideal in a building or a barn, very bright, very useful art. Wouldn't go walking with that style of lamp though. You can see how you've got the spaces there. That's what's called a hot blast lamp. Now, cold blast, hot blast, what that's basically referring to is the type of air that operates them that comes down the arms. So if you take this little 275 here, underneath this cowl there are holes into those arms, and when it's lit and the flame is drawing air, it pulls cold air from under here down these arms into a hollow space there, and then blows it through that little shape, the cowl round the wick, and that gives the actual flame that fan shape that you'll see in a moment. And it the hotter they get, the more it does that. It's basically like a very primitive air turbo that makes them run. Now, these things are delightfully simple to use. Lighting them is actually very, very easy, but if you've never owned one before, you've never lit one before, there is one mistake that everybody makes when they light them, and that is they light them and they turn the wick up to make it brighter, and then they hang it up. They'll come back 5 minutes later and it'll be absolutely roaring with black smoke, and they'll be like, what on earth's going on here? Lighting them is very, very simple. So these have now been lit for about 5-10 minutes, and it is now hot enough that I can turn up the flame to where I want it. So with these turning the flame up, you just turn the wick up until you get the flame to the desired height, desired brightness. And as a general rule of thumb, because obviously the question is, well, how much can I turn it up? General rule, you can turn it up until it starts smoking. As soon as you start getting black smoke coming either off the flame or out the top of these flumes up here, just back it off a bit until it stops that smoking, and that's it. That's as bright as you can. Then take it. Turning them down, you can turn it down as absolutely much as you like. That will sit there now quite happily for hours and hours and hours on end, behaving itself. So why do I like these more than electric lighting? Several reasons. Firstly, I don't like white light. I do not like white light at all. So lots of LED appliances now, the light that they give out is ultra bright white light. You know, it's in that sort of 6000K colour spectrum. I actually find that quite dull. I find it very difficult to see. I did this thing with one of the cars where I swapped the bulbs to xenon, and xenon gas bulbs tend to have a very blue light, which again, my eyes don't enjoy that. So I swapped back to halogen, which is technically just as bright, but it's more of a yellow, a warm light, which I personally think I can see further with. So with these around a camp, complements the glow of the fire, and it's just that nice warm yellowy light. They also give off a heck of a lot of heat. So sitting around them, you put your hands over them, or if you're inside a shelter, I wouldn't advise you to fasten yourself inside a tent with one. Obviously there's a fire risk, but also they are burning oil-based fuel, so they're going to be giving off dangerous gas. Excuse me. If it is really cold, I do get in a tent with one and warm the tent up and then put it outside when I've warmed myself up a bit, but I'm not advising you to sleep with one in your tent. I don't want reports of people gassing themselves to death in their sleep, but they are very warm. You're getting a lot of heat at the same time as you're getting light. Also, runtime. These and these, they are very hot. I shouldn't really do that. These and these two, and probably that one, will run for around 20 hours on one full tank. Now, these little fuel tanks on them hold about 1/4 of a litre of paraffin, and last week when I always have quite a big stock of paraffin, and then last week when I restocked mine, it was 78p a litre. So, you know, for 78p, I can get almost 100 hours of light out of these things. But there is something else. There is another reason, something that they do even more better than any electric lamp is ever really going to, and something that I think we can all agree is very important. These things are the absolute death of bugs and flying critters, particularly mosquitoes. Now, as the paraffin burns, it does give off, I think it's quite a nice smell, to be fair, but bugs and insects and flying insects absolutely hate the smell of these. So from the moment I get to a camp, if I'm being plagued by any sort of bugs, even if it's daytime, first thing I'll do once I've got my shelter up, hang a couple of these bad boys up, light them, and the smell itself then starts to get rid of all of the bugs for me because they hate it. Any bug that doesn't hate the smell is attracted to the light, flies itself off in there, incinerates itself, and well, it's no longer a problem. So electric lights have a nasty habit of attracting bugs to you, whereas these things, any bug that can put up with the smell of them and comes in sniffing about ends up incinerating itself and gets it out your face. So these really are the absolute blight of mosquitoes. Now, because they are oil-based fuel, paraffin is oil, you can put citronella oil in the tank. You can mix it directly in with the fuel and it will turn it into even more of a bug repellent light. You know, you can get your citronella candles and all of that. The only trouble is if you're off camping with a citronella candle, wind puts it out. it takes a hell of a wind to blow one of these. You know, they are referred to as storm lamps or hurricane lamps. It would take a massive amount of wind to blow them out. You can also mix for the people out there, whoa, don't do that, I'm gonna knock my table over. For the people out there that prefer a more shall we say sensual camp, you can also mix essential oils in there. So you can mix your lavenders and peppermint oil, all that stuff. If you're particularly terrified of spiders, peppermint oil, spiders hate it. Or maybe you've just found yourself a date that enjoys bushcraft and you want to have the fragrance of lavender floating about. These are your toys. You can put anything oil based pretty much in with the fuel and it will work as that diffuser. But as I said, my favourite part of them is the colour of the light that they give out and the fact that most insects absolutely despise the things. Go. So I've just been and fetched another 275. I have got about 6 of the 275 model. I use them all the time, camping and various things. I take them out in the camper van for a heater backup, because I have a diesel heater in it which sometimes gets a bit rebellious depending on what the weather's doing, so they make a good backup. I've just fetched another one out while that one's cooling down. Like I say, it's made by the company Fjordhand, and it says on it Western Germany 275 baby. That's its model. Now if you're planning on buying some to have a go with, that's the one I recommend the most. There's thousands of models out there, but these ones are by far the most well behaved and easy to work with. Not to offend anyone out there, there's a lot of like Chinesey ones on the market. They just don't work, particularly the newer models where they've copied the design. And when they've copied the design, what they haven't noticed is the airflow system that goes down the arms, and they haven't copied that into it, so they just burn for a few minutes and then put themselves out. But these things, the Fjordhand ones, are the most reliable. Now the company still exists. You don't have to buy like these. I always go for the really old ones. I like the patina, but you don't have to. They still exist as a company. They're still producing them, and they are still making them brand spanking new. This one is a 276, the military variant. It's just got it's the same lamp as the 275. It's just a slightly larger fuel tank, really. And that one is actually brand new, and it came in powder coat olive green, which is lovely. But that was brand new like a year or two ago, and it's exactly the same company as these old ones. So you can buy them brand spanking new and then not have to worry about whether the previous owner's damaged it or what condition the wick is in. So maintenance wise with these, they really don't require that much care. Every so often you have to clean the glass. That's not for hanging them up, and if you was to hang them on your ceiling or something from that loop, you'd burn whatever was above it, because they do kick out quite some heat. But that there is the glass release. You pull that up, your glass leans out. From there you can take it out of these little spring clips and clean it. Clean it with cold water, clean it with hot water, you can clean it with fairy liquid if you like, you can chuck it in a dishwasher. They're pretty simple to clean. They are heat treated glass. A bit of soap on a sponge doesn't do them any harm. But while that glass is out, I can show you the other little maintenance thing with them. Now every so often you need to clean the top of the wick. The wicks in them last absolutely ages. Most of these that I have bought are nearing 100 years old now, and most of them, for the most part, still have their original factory fitted wicks in them. With this lamp as well, because that cowl isn't part of this lower system and it moves out the way, trimming and cleaning your wick is dead easy, because you've got that turn my little screen back on. You can see you've actually got that little flat piece there that the wick comes up out of. Yeah, so that's where you'd set your level to. Now you get carbon develop on the top of it, or sometimes you'll have like a white ash develop on the top. That usually only happens though when you've let them burn completely out of fuel, and that's when they'll really ash up across the top. So to deal with that, you don't need to go taking a pair of scissors to it. Just turn it up until the top part of it is just sticking above the little metal wick guard there, and then at that point Just run your finger across the top of it to knock that carbon off. Blow the excess away. There you go, nice carbony finger. And then your wick is perfectly flat to the top of that tube, because really your wick wants to be as flat across that tube top as you can possibly get it, and then you'll get that nice ace of spades fanned out shape in it. And that really is all there is to wick maintenance, until it comes to changing one, which it really doesn't have. To be honest with you, if you've bought one brand new, like the 276 down there, and you haven't constantly let it burn itself dry, the chances are you wouldn't be replacing the wick in your lifetime. They do last a heck of a long time, and they're fairly simple to replace. You pull out what's left of the old one, poke the new one in, and just wind it back in. Can be very fiddly to do sometimes, that can, but eventually they will go in. But like I say, you're looking potentially thousands of hours of burn time before you would need a new wick. Just don't constantly let them run out of fuel. And it is fairly safe if you're out camping and you notice one's running out of juice. They're fairly safe to just take the cap off and put fuel in them while it's still burning. You're not going to blow yourself to pieces. And that's another benefit again with the kerosene lamps, paraffin lamps, is that there are a lot of other variations. Petrol, I'll show you a petrol one later on, but the old favourite tent destroyer, the Calagas ones. Now, the old Calagas, I don't have one as an example because I got rid of all of mine, because so many people actually ended up burning the tents down and hurting themselves with them. But the old Calagas mantle lamps, similar in design to this, they use a mantle, a heat-proof mantle that glows white when the gas is burning through it. And you can still see them online, you can still buy them, I believe, and they screw to an actual gas bottle, and then you just light the mantle directly. Perfectly bright, perfectly good. Very, very dangerous though, because if you get a leak, it's gas, very explosive. If you knock them over and the mantle breaks, you've now got jets of gas everywhere. One of the benefits with paraffin as a fuel is very much like diesel. It won't burn on its own. If you poured paraffin all over your hand and tried to light it, it's not going to light. It just won't light. Paraffin's more like diesel. It's a heavy oil. In fact, I'll just show you that. So paraffin, unlike petrol or anything, it's classed as a heavy oil like diesel, which means it's only flammable when it's either heated, put under pressure, or it has a wick to burn on. So you might think me a little strange here, but if I pour some paraffin on my hand there, try and ignite it, it simply won't. I would have to get my hand that hot to boil the fuel to make it burn, that, well, you wouldn't do it because you'd be like, my hand is in a furious amount of pain. If that was petrol, like some of the lamps, I'll show you one of those later on, but if that was petrol, obviously my hand would be completely up in flames and I'd be running around the campsite screaming, trying to find a way to put myself out. Paraffin, like diesel, needs that wick to burn, and even then it doesn't flash burn. So if that was again petrol, if I lit this, it would go woof, great big balls of flames. If I light this now, with it being paraffin, what will happen is it will slowly engage down the tissue. There you go. See, it's quite slow. It doesn't just instantly blast into flames. And that's tissue. That's just kitchen rolls. You can imagine if that was fabric or something, it would go even slower still. So it is, as a fuel, a heck of a lot safer than petrol and a lot safer than gas. Because that's another problem with the petrol variant. If you're filling them up with fuel, if you spill that fuel, you've then got to clean that up very carefully before you light it, because obviously petrol isn't evaporative, it's a spirit. It turns itself on its own into a gas, into a vapor, just at atmospheric pressure, and that itself becomes what's going to light and what's going to woof and flash flame. So in my opinion, the kerosene lamps, the paraffin styles, they are safer for a lot of reasons and a heck of a lot more benefits. My favourite one being the fact that mosquitoes absolutely despise the damn things. Right then, onwards to the Tilly. Now these are a completely different animal. These are a pressure lamp. They still work on paraffin, but they are a pressure mantle lamp. So what this is doing As I said a moment ago about paraffins and diesels needing to be heated and pressurized to make them burn effectively, this lamp, it boils the paraffin in the top of the system here and then blasts it with air pressure into that little white mantle there, which turns it into a gas. It then ignites and burns in that gas. As a consequence though, you can't just light these. You don't just pump them up and then put a flame to them and they ignite. You have to prime them, you have to warm them up. Firstly though, if you do buy one of these, now this again, all of mine are old. I've been collecting them for a long time, so I tend to collect the antique ones. The company Tilly that makes these particular ones, lots of other companies around that make pressure lamps. This one in particular is a Tilly. I think it's a model 501 or something. I'm not sure. I've got that many different variants of them. Mine are the older ones. The same applies though with the paraffin ones. You can buy brand new ones. They do still make them. You can buy a brand spanking new out of the box, which if you're not familiar with them, I would advise that you do go for a new model. And quite often people selling the second-hand ones are a little bit delusional, where they're like antique and they'll be asking 70-80 quid. It's not worth it. If you're going to be paying 70-80 quid for an old one, you could get a brand new one for about that price and save yourself a lot of trouble. And the main trouble is going to be that little tube that runs up the middle there. It's called a vaporizer, and it's got a tiny valve at the very top of it, and that's the bit that actually does the business of turning that paraffin liquid into a mist as it goes into the heat system at the top. That does eventually wear out. Now they last a hell of a long time, but if you buy an older one and you've already paid £60-70 for it, you're going to be looking at £60-70 to replace that tube. So unless you really want one that's got the old look and the old patina about it, I wouldn't advise you buy a second-hand one, not unless you've got absolute proof that it's in full working order, because you'll probably find yourself paying twice the price to get the thing running. So if you're not used to them, buy it brand new. So you've got your pump valve there. That is literally like a little built-in bike pump. That's what you put the air in with. It's also your filler cap. That's where you put your paraffin. That is also the on and off switch, and I'll explain that. They do have a valve switch built in there. That is not an on and off switch. It does switch the lamp off, yes. What it actually is for is it's to clean the little valve at the top of the vaporizer. When you switch it all the way off, a tiny little pin inside goes up and pokes into the hole, and then when you open it again, pulls it back down. So when you, if these are burning and your mantle's got carbon on it, it's got dirty, the way that you clean that is to keep flicking it on and off with that switch there, and that will blow all the carbon off the mantle and clean it. That is not really an off switch to light it. And when you've switched the things off, do not leave that valve closed, and don't leave that tight shut neither, because what'll happen is if you leave that pump valve screwed shut, it's now sealed. On a warm day, the paraffin warms up and it'll leak. It'll push it up the tube and it'll leak. So to switch them off, just let the air out. Yeah? Let the air out with that pump valve. It will go out on its own. Leave that valve alone unless you need it to clean the mantle off with. That does not apply with the petrol ones. Do not ever, if you've got a petrol lamp, do not ever let the air out whilst it's lit. It will potentially explode into flames. Paraffin won't, petrol will. With these, let that air out. Like I say, we'll show you a petrol one a bit later on. So this lamp, to light it, you have to prime it. Now, to prime it, you have to use something like methylated spirits. That says white spirit. It isn't. I've just recycled the bottle. Good old purple methylated spirit. You use this because it burns clean. It doesn't give off nasty carbon that will get your mantle all filthy. With these, you'll have some sort of little clip-on wick jobby. Soak that full of the methylated spirits. It's all over the table. Just leave that soak up a bit. Delicious. And once you've done that, clip it on that little tube at the bottom there, underneath the hole in the glass, and light it. From that point, Leave it until that burns out, or until it's very, very, very close to burning out. Now with the Tillies, sometimes, particularly if it's very cold, if your ambient temperature is incredibly cold, they sometimes won't ignite from one priming. So if in doubt, prime it twice. Just make sure you've blown the flames out before you go tipping methylated spirit on it, obviously, otherwise you're going to end up on fire. But if in doubt, if you think the weather's a little bit cold, prime it twice, and then you know it's definitely going to light first time without any bother. Or again, if you've left it sat for a while, not a bother, but I would prime it twice. It's another good thing with the kerosene lamps versus the petrol ones. You can leave them with the fuel in indefinitely. It won't evaporate and it won't go off. It won't change over time. Petrol goes funny after a long time of storage. If you leave it lying around too long, it starts to turn a bit jelly-like and clogs things up. It's the same with old vehicles, petrol tanks. You have to drive them, slosh them about a bit. Kerosene, paraffin, it doesn't care. You can leave it indefinitely sat in a corner. As I mentioned earlier though, with the Tillies, if you're leaving them stored with fuel in the tank, keep your pump valve unscrewed a little so that air can move about. Otherwise, they will self-pressurize from heat, temperature, and they'll start leaking juice. So my little priming wick now is running low. Close your valve shut, start pumping air into it. You'll hear it start to hiss in a moment. Flames igniting. As soon as you've got that little white flame on the mantle coming in, take that wick out of the way, blow it out, just pop it out the way to cool down. If I leave it under there so it's got two types of flame going on, it just tends to dirty its mantle up. Keep pumping air into it until it starts getting a bit stronger. When you're first igniting these, you don't really want more than about 50 pumps into them. I haven't counted, but I've been doing it that long. So at the moment that's fairly dull, but it will be. These will heat themselves up the longer they're lit. And the longer they're lit, the brighter they get. We'll just leave that running for a moment. So the old Tilly's warm now, very warm. Vitamin coffee. Oh, can't help myself, just cheers you up a good brew. This nasty little cold just will not go away. So she's warm now, it's ready to pump it up some more. Very, very warm. The thing with the Tillies, all of them give out heat, obviously they've got flame. The Tillies give out an absolute ridiculous amount of heat. When they go in properly, it's somewhere around 2 kilowatts of heat that they put out. I've used these in my little camper van as well as a heater, and bloody Nora, it gets, it's too hot, it's too much. So now, get some more air in it, another 50 odd pumps is fine. And like I say, the longer they run, the hotter, the brighter that they get. I do have a little bit of carbon in on the mantle, which is good because I can show you the cleaning procedure with that. Now these are lovely, aren't they, because of the comforting shh of the air pushing the fuel through. They're very hot. They do the exact same job when it comes to bug repelling as well, a little more efficient at it because anything touches that, any bug touches that, it's instantly dead. I have actually used the top of these lamps to boil water, and they do that really quite effectively. And another great feature of them, because of the shape of the bottom of your brew cup and the shape of that, if your coffee's going cold, a couple of minutes sat on top of there, you get yourself a nice hot coffee again. And I do that quite a lot when I'm camping with them. The drawback with these from a camping perspective is they are much larger, much heavier, harder to transport. They're also a bit more fuel happy. They drink quite a bit more juice. The tank's a lot larger than the littler ones. You've probably got You can probably get around a litre or just under a litre in it. They will do, depending on how heavily you've pumped them up. I've had about 10 hours solid use out of one on a litre, so you do get a lot less run time than say something like that. But you've probably already noticed you're looking 7-8 times as bright as one of them. They give off around a 40-watt light bulb amount of light when they, ooh, hell, that is hot. When they get fully running after about an hour of usage and they're at their sort of peak brightness, you're probably looking upwards of 60 watts of light out of it. I know light bulbs are measured in lumens, not watts, but I'm old school, I don't care. So, what have we got now? Burning lovely and bright. A bit of carboning going on there. Now, as I said, to clean that carboning off, this valve, you're going to just close and open it. Yeah, over and over again. And it starts blowing that carbon off the mantle. However, when it's only like that, I mean, it's not black carbon, that there is just kind of like little grey sooty patches, probably caused by the lighting procedure. With that, I wouldn't bother flicking the valve on and off to clean it. I'd just leave it alone. Because once it's been running long enough, the heat of it itself is going to clear that out. That at the moment as well, that's not full brightness yet. It's going to get a lot brighter than that. These takes them a good half hour to get fully hot. And again, pretty windproof. So I don't think it's going to be super dark in the back of this garage, but if I don't know why it said highlight added. What the hell does that mean? Okay. So if I just unplug the old electric lights for a moment, I don't think it's stupid dark in the back of there. No, I don't think the garage is quite dark enough to demonstrate that. But you can still see quite a large difference between these and obviously the actual hurricane lamps. In brightness, it's massive. And the longer that they run, the brighter they get. I have ridiculous quantities of lamps, to be quite honest with you. The cold blast type, I don't know, I think I lost count at 60. I have 3 identical of these Tillys, and I know my dad has quite a collection of Vaporlux lamps. They're another British lamp maker, very nice looking. The Tillys, wonderful things in operation, but they're much in design, construction, they're a bit more of like a farm lamp. So, something else now for a bit of fun. Let's just move the camera slightly onto the table a bit more for this one. Because now this is where people are going to be thinking, honestly, Dan, what a lamp nerd. We have a Primus paraffin stove. This thing actually gets used every single day. We use this all the time for making cups of tea, general purpose cooking, you name it, it gets used. It's just, we just use it as a cooker, which it is obviously. From a camping perspective, this one is a little bulky, but it is incredibly fuel efficient. There's a picnic variant that exists that goes in a nice little case. I'll show you that in a bit. But this thing is stupidly fuel efficient. It's used every day. We're probably filling it once a week, to be fair. If you're using things like jet boils and stuff like that, they're great if you're backpacking, you're moving around a lot. But if you're, say, having a static camp, if you're not using your actual fire for it, I'd go for something like this, because we're filling this probably once a week. Your jet boils, your things like that, the gas containers are actually quite expensive. To operate it is exactly the same as a Tilly. You've got your air valve there, that just seals the tank so that you can pump air into it. Now, unlike the Tilly, it doesn't have the twisty thing to put a needle up the jet to clean it or anything like that. It doesn't really need it, and the air pump is obviously there. So to light it, leave that air valve open so that air can move around between the fuel tank. If you don't, what will happen is close that shut. When you prime it, the tank will get warm, the paraffin will expand, it'll start leaking, and you'll get yellow flames before you've even lit it. You don't want that. It has a little priming ring there. Tip the mets into that little priming ring until it's pretty much full to the top. Like that, methylated spirit, and just leave it, let it boil, let it prime. Oh, coffee. I'm just looking at the back of my garage and the state of it and all the things that I've got going on, and noticed I do actually have one of the old Cala stoves in the corner at the back up there tucked away. So I've got a couple of more video ideas that are going to be shot in the back of the garage. I imagine over the time there'll be a lot of them, but there's a few more things coming that are going to be stuck in the garage, as it's often my little workshop for all sorts of things. So I think what I might do is either like a bit of a where's Wally or a spot the difference. I might just move a few things around in the background and see if anyone can notice what I've moved. It's very chaotic at the back of there, but just like any garage should be. So the primer methylated spirits has burnt out on this, and as I said before, if it's cold weather or you're not sure, if in doubt, prime it twice. But again, make sure it's gone out before you go tipping mets in there, otherwise the bottle's going to go up in flames. Prime it twice, and then I know it'll definitely light. So a more modern equivalent, it's not that modern, I've had this a heck of a long time. I often just use it as a backup for things. This is your more modern one, your gas one. Obviously you've got more modern versions these days. You've got your jet boils and a lot of other more complicated things. The advantages of these ones is they're instant lighting. Yeah, turn your valve on, light it, burning. Disadvantage of it is there's a lot of different seals and things and rubber O-rings involved in that. It's easy to badly fit a gas bottle. If these end up leaking, particularly if you're using them inside a tent or an enclosed space, gas can be incredibly dangerous. With the paraffin ones, the fuel leak, you're just mopping up a bit of paraffin. Very unlikely you're going to blow up or set fire to everything you've got, but you know, if you do a bit of research online, there is lots and lots and lots of examples where these things have gone badly wrong, and they are responsible for a few deaths. But also, stability wise, they flare up if you shake them about, turn them over. They don't like, this one's behaving itself rather now, of course it is because I'm trying to demonstrate it, but they can flare and misbehave. I don't think there's actually a lot of gas left in this one, to be honest with you. That is an alternative, but like I say, gas can be dangerous. I'll just turn that off. This one again, primer ring's burned out now, should easily be hot enough. Close your air valve, pump it up until you can hear it. Yeah, we've got a hiss. Flames lit. Just start pumping it slow, let it warm itself up. Particularly as you see at the moment, you've got little flashes of yellow flame around it. You want it to be completely blue. It's only doing that because it's just warming up. Once it's warmed up a bit, the whole thing will go absolutely blue. Wow, the heat off that. There's no doubt at all in my mind that the paraffin ones are a heck of a lot hotter than the gas. There's no doubt to it whatsoever. The good old methane gas is just not as hot as the oil fuel. And that's an old primer stove running away happily. Yeah, there's no water in that. So Tilly's getting up to about full brightness now. We'll probably happily take another couple of air pumps. And the old Primus is roaring away. So this, when you're finished with it, These slightly different than the Tilly lamps. You don't undo the pump valve. It has a dedicated little air release there, and when you open that, all the pressure of the tank comes out and the flame goes out, and then you just leave it to cool and it's fine. Again though, just like with the Tilly, if it's got fuel in it, don't leave it with that screwed shut, because when it gets warm from whatever reason, air pressure or anything like that, the pressure in the tank will increase and it will start weeping paraffin out of the valve at the top. So the last stove I showed you, large thing. This one, however, is more of a backpacking version of a paraffin stove. It has its own weather cowl to keep the wind off it when you're priming it, with its little door to light it with. Very cute. But it all pulls apart, and those little legs fold in, and it all goes in this little tin here, which I'm not going to show you in the tin because it's actually full of fuel and I can't be bothered to empty the fuel out of it. But it all folds away and goes in a little stove, a lot more transportable than its larger brother, yes. Cute little thing really. And in the tin, it's actually about the same size as some of the gas equivalents or the jet oils and things like that. It's not massively different size to transport. I'm a bit biased. I obviously have a bit of a love of paraffin appliances. When it gets really cold, I have 2 paraffin heaters that heat this garage up for me. Right, we are now working with the big boy lamp. Hold on a minute. Silly me, we need a bit of more light. Excuse me. So that is a Coleman Powerhouse, I believe it's a 295 twin mantle petrol lamp. Runs on unleaded petrol. This one is a little dusty. It's been in the garage a heck of a long time. Now, because we are working with petrol, I'm going to get rid of all of these for the moment. I don't want any naked flames around the table. Just pop them down here out the way. Especially this big old girl. I don't want you igniting everything. So I've just moved all them, because as I said earlier, the thing with paraffin, kerosene, it's not just going to explode into flames on its own. This thing's running on unleaded petrol, which is very well known for just exploding on its own, especially if there's a flame around. When you buy one of these jobbies, it should always come, there's a single mantle version available. I have one of those as well. Why go less though? Let's have the twin mantle one. Undo your fuel cap. Some silly person's left this pressurised. There we go, let the pressure out gently. Now, it's very important to mention with this one, with it being petrol, what you just see me do there, opening the cap, letting the air pressure out, obviously at some point you're going to have to do that. Don't ever do that if the lamp is lit or around other naked flames. Petrol, being a spirit, vaporizes at normal atmosphere temperatures and pressures, and obviously with petrol it's the vapor itself that ignites. Hence why in a petrol car it has spark plugs, it's the sparks that ignite it, not pressure. Do not ever let the air pressure out if the lamp is lit, because that vapor is flammable and the lamp itself can ignite that vapor. Then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Now, completely against what I said about the Tillys, with these petrol ones, the valve on the front there is the off and on switch. You use that to turn it off and on. Whereas with the Tillys, I recommend using the release of the pressure to switch the lamp off. I mean, you can switch the Tilly off with its valve and then let the pressure out. It's just because with the Tilly it has the needle that cleans the valve, that is obviously over time going to add a bit more wear to the top of your vaporizer. On these, interestingly, that little tube that goes up to the mantles isn't called a vaporizer, it's referred to as a generator. And when you buy these, they will always come with a little fuel filter device that you use when you're filling the tank up. Make sure that you use that. These, and the reason why they're not my favourite, although they are brighter than the Tillys, there is no doubt when it comes to pressure lamps that the petrol ones are the brightest of the bunch. They are incredibly fuel fussy. Old dirty fuel in them, or any bits of stuff that have got in there, liquid, water vapour, bits of dust, anything that gets in that tank will clog these, stop it working, then you've got to strip it and faff them. That's why these aren't my personal favourites. Yes, they are brighter, but they are a lot more fussy in operation. Tillys, you get a bit of dirt in the bottom of them tanks, it doesn't bother them one bit, but these things, they are very, very fuel fussy. Anytime you're filling it, always use the little fuel filter. Just put a little nice clean petrol in. And then obviously, with it being petrol, get that well out of the way. And the same for this. Obviously now, because I've just poured petrol through it, because I've just poured, I don't know why I do things like that. Because I've just poured petrol through it, that filter itself is now highly flammable. So we're going to pop it back in its little baggie and get it out of the way. Now with these, unlike the Tillys, firstly make sure your valve is off. Unlike the Tillys, these don't need priming. You don't need to use your little mantle and your meths to heat the thing up. Because it's petrol, it will automatically ignite on its own. But I am going to need quite a large flame to reach up through the ignition hole. There is some little holes here where you slip your lighting device. If you've got a long lighter, you don't really need to do that. I don't have one right now, so what I'm going to do is just modify this lighter a little bit and give it a larger flame. And that should really make it easier. There we go. Right then. Yeah, that's big enough. So with these things, very simple, valve off. Now with these, they have a close thing. So what you do is like the pump, you've got to turn it counterclockwise to open it. A little thumb hole on the top of there that would just let all the air out if you don't cover it. Again, somewhere 30 to 50 pumps. You'll feel it giving you a bit of back pressure when you've got enough in it. That should be enough to light it. Valve down, twist it shut. Then little lighting holes under there, stick a flame under it, and at the same time turn the valve on. You can hear it hissing. Go. You see, it engages automatically with it being petrol, so you don't need to prime it. Now it's just warming itself up a bit, that's why it's flicking around a bit. Now it's lit, I'm going to go ahead and just stick a little bit more pressure in it.
close that valve shut.
Now, that's just going to flick and wibble a bit until it's warmed up. Unlike the Tillies though, which are pretty much one size fits all where the amount of light's concerned, these do have a selector. You can run it on a lower light if you need to, saves a bit of fuel. Particularly though, whilst lighting them, keep it on its high setting, let it warm up, let it get going properly. And we'll come back to that. So there's the Coleman twin mantle petrol one, sat against the Tilly. You can see that the twin mantle petrol one is a little bit brighter than the Tilly, but it's nowhere near as hot. It's not giving out anywhere near as much heat, even though it is a twin mantle one. And like I said earlier, they are a little more fuel fussy. They really do need to have really clean fuel, hence the little filters and stuff that they come with. But that is my preferences on bushcraft lighting. I am very much not a fan of electric lights other than simply really as backups. Plus, you just look so much cooler wandering around the woodlands with something like that in your hand than a torch. Be very aware though of the differences in the lamps as per safety concerns. So the petrol one doesn't particularly smell like the paraffin one. Doesn't smell bad, but you can definitely tell that something is burning. So the petrol one is giving off a lot of carbon monoxide and gases that you can't really smell and you won't know. So in enclosed spaces, not so good having the petrol one roaring away. And like I did say earlier on, particularly with petrol lamps, when you come to switch them off, use the valve and then let the pressure out of the tank. I'm not going to let the pressure out right now. I have this big chap roaring away next to it, and obviously petrol vaporizes, so there is a bit of a fire risk if I was to do that. But with the Tillies being paraffin, perfectly safe to just let the vapor out of that tank, let the air out, and it just puts itself out. It'll go woof 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 in a minute. And she is out and cooling down. So that is my preferences on a bushcraft lighting. Please let me know in the comments what your thoughts are as to the sort of lights you like to use when you're camping, or if you have any questions as per any of the types of lighting that I've shown you today. If you're interested, you want to know what sort of things to look for, or if you have some and you have any sort of problems with them, please feel free to get in touch. I know quite a bit about a lot of different types of these sorts of lamps, so if you're having any problems with them, chances are I might be able to help you. Other than that though, folks, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully in the next week or so I will be able to get myself back to the woods and bring you some more woodland based activities. And as always, get yourselves out there, get bushcrafting and have fun.